This place turned into such a downbeat joint. Anyway, I'll put it to good use, so just hand over the keys and get lost. Don't you dare talk back to me. This place used to belong to my folks, didn't it?
3 years ago, my ex-husband, Aaron, who had disappeared on me, came back threatening me with a thug-like tone. After causing me so much trouble, he had the nerve to tell me he wanted to turn the place into a spa for his new girl. But it seems like he doesn't realize my current situation at all. Well, I'll let him act all high and mighty for now. In less than an hour, he'll deeply regret ever leaving me and this place. My name is Hilda. I'm 40 years old and run a restaurant with my husband Aaron, which we inherited from my in-laws. The reason we took over the restaurant was because my in-laws tragically died in a car accident a year ago. Aaron never had any intention of taking over the shop until then, but the sudden loss of his parents must have changed his mind. "Hilda, I'm gonna run the restaurant," he confidently declared. Since I used to be a regular customer at my in-laws' restaurant, I was totally on board with him quitting his job to run the shop. Fortunately, they must have hoped he'd take over someday, as they left behind their recipes, which made the transition of taking over pretty smooth. But when it came to the actual management, everything was far from smooth. First off, Aaron had barely ever cooked before, so his dish was far from good. Actually, that might be putting it mildly. To be blunt, a high schooler working part-time at a shop would probably make much better meal. Within 2 months of starting the business, customers who tried his lackluster dish left. I used to help out at the shop whenever I had free time. So, I figured the business would probably run better if I took over the cooking. But when I suggested I make the meal instead, Aaron turned beet red and yelled, "Women shouldn't be in the kitchen." My dad never let my mom cook, no matter how busy he was. If he had skills like my father-in-law, maybe it would have been okay to say no women in the kitchen, but coming from him, it just seemed like a bluff. Biting back my retort of "then make better meal," I did my best to support the struggling business. To respect Aaron's wish that I mustn't cook in the shop, I started making sandwiches at home and selling them as takeout at the shop, which actually brought in a new clientele. Thanks to this, the business slowly started to recover. But when the dust settled, my sandwiches were outselling Aaron's dish. Annoyed by this, he declared, "It's the old-fashioned look of the place. We need a bold renovation." He was not making much money, but he insisted on remodeling the store. Even though we weren't making much profit, he went ahead and revamped the shop. As a result, the cozy old restaurant vibe was gone, replaced with a chic, bar-like ambience. Even our loyal customers started to drift away, saying, "I can't relax and eat here anymore. I used to love the vibe here." Undeterred, Aaron continued to say things like, "It's the outdated equipment that's making taste bad. We need bolder advertising." And he poured a huge amount of money into new equipment and advertising. All that was left was debt so high that even if we mortgaged the shop, we couldn't repay it. It seemed he finally realized the reality of our situation. "I think we should declare bankruptcy and start fresh. I'll always stick by your side," I told him, and he nodded in agreement. But it wasn't out of respect for my opinion. The restaurant just isn't for me. Besides, traditional meals are old-fashioned. I'm not the type to be tied down to a place like this. Handing me several documents, he muttered this like a mantra. When I checked them, all the debt was under my name. He also handed me 2 more documents, a signed divorce paper and papers transferring ownership of the shop to me.
You always loved this place since my parents' days. So, I'll give it to you. If you're okay with a trashy shop that barely gets any customers.
Still in shock and confused, I watched as Aaron walked out, bag in hand. I reported his disappearance to the police, but he wasn't found, so I reluctantly filed the divorce papers. 3 years after Aaron disappeared, just as I was taking a break after work, the shop's door was violently thrown open. Who appeared was Aaron, who should have abandoned me and the store, accompanied by a woman who seemed at least 10 years younger than him. Aaron looked around the shop and said, "What's this?" "I renovated this place for you, and it still looks the same as when my folks ran it. Guess this old-fashioned store suits you." He then brazenly walked into the store. The younger woman crinkled her nose in disdain. "What do you want?" "I thought you left for good." As I calmly asked, he smirked condescendingly and replied, "Shut up. This is my store. My girl Carol wants to start a beauty salon, so I'm gonna let her use this place." "You already filed for divorce, didn't you? So, you're a stranger now. Get lost." He gestured dismissively as if shooing away a fly. The woman called Carol's side and remarked, "It's not too far from the train station, so the location isn't too bad. But this greasy smell, we'd need to get a cleaner." She assessed the store, completely ignoring me. After he left me, it seems he started dating this woman. I couldn't help but sigh, realizing he'd really sunk this low. Suddenly, perhaps annoyed by my reaction, Aaron said,
"Don't get too cocky. I've made it big now."
He threw a card at me, which I couldn't make out. It was in a foreign language. Apparently, he'd joined an overseas organization. No wonder he was unaware of the current state of our store. As I was trying to make sense of the card, he began talking about his life, even though I hadn't asked. His story wasn't particularly impressive. After leaving me, Aaron squandered his daily earnings on gambling until one day he was recruited by an overseas semi-illegal group. Due to his cunning, he rose to a significant position and now wanted to show off to his money-chasing girlfriend by coming back to the family shop he once abandoned. Despite his boasting, the clothes he wore were cheap foreign imports. The term "big" probably just meant he held a decent rank within that shady group. As I tiredly listened to Aaron's story, the young woman named Carol tapped him on the shoulder. She glanced at me briefly and said,
"So, when is this old hag leaving? She's the one who took over your shop and ran it to the ground, right?"
She was basing her assumptions on the lies Aaron fed her. Understanding the situation, I felt a hint of pity for her and decided to tell her the truth.
"He's the one who ran the store into the ground. He'd blame everything on the equipment and the interior because he couldn't make decent meal. He kept piling on debt. The money I painstakingly earned by making sandwiches just vanished like water."
I went to the kitchen, washed my hands. With the skill of a master, I quickly made a sandwich and said, "You're too thin. Put on some weight before you collapse." I then placed a plate with the sandwich in front of her. She politely said, "Thank you," and took a bite, ignoring my ex-husband who said, "Hey, you have better food than this old lady's meal." She ignored his attempts to restrain her, and bit into the sandwich I had made for her. She finished eating in a flash and exclaimed, "That was delicious." She let out a pouty comment, surprised herself at how quickly she finished her meal. Seeing Carol's softened attitude, Aaron, unable to hide his frustration, said,
"Hey! Don't think you can solve everything with just a sandwich. My group won't hesitate to make you disappear if you mess around."
But, after all, he's just a small-time crook picked up by some overseas mob. I wasn't scared at all. In fact, I found his threats amusing.
You might intimidate the people you deal with using threats like that, but to me, they're too weak. I've dealt with people far scarier than you to pay off the debt you left behind.
I then placed another plate of sandwiches in front of Aaron. He looked at them with interest, but didn't eat due to his pride. Carol then said, "If you're not eating, I will," and pulled the plate towards her. Without waiting for him to react, she quickly finished the second sandwich. I then informed Aaron about the current state of the shop.
You might not know since you were abroad, but this shop hasn't changed hands since you gave it to me. I had to bow and beg countless times to the creditors you owed, working tirelessly to save the store. You think this dingy old restaurant is better than Carol's beauty salon? If you mess around, my guys won't show any mercy."
He angrily banged on the counter and spat on the well-polished floor, looking every bit the thug he had become. His actions and behavior were downright thuggish. I always knew he wasn't the best, but I never imagined he'd stoop this low. I was beating myself up for once being married to such a man, when the half-open door of the diner creaked loudly and opened. In walked a massive guy, nearly 6.5 feet tall. His built physique and the aura he carried felt more deeply rooted in the underworld than my ex-husband ever did. The man in a polo shirt and an apron hurried over and said,
"Hilda, you all right? I got a call from a buddy saying some shady dude was here."
As he spoke, he shot a stern glare at Aaron and Carol. Whether sensing his intimidating presence or not, Aaron seemed visibly taken aback. I smiled at the big man and said, "I'm good, Jones. I think I've told you about him before. This is my ex-husband. Let me introduce you. He's the one who used to handle my debts at the payday loan place. Now he's managing one of our branches here." I let them know about each other's backgrounds. Jones, staring intently at Aaron, remarked, "So, this is that worthless guy. You ain't thinking of getting back with our boss, are you? You bring her down once, and now you want to come back? Sounds a bit too convenient, don't you think?" His imposing manner was enough to overshadow Aaron's previous bravado, intimidating the two at the counter. Turning a shade paler, Carol managed, "No. I just came for some sandwich." She shot a pleading look my way. I gave a slight nod in response to Carol's gaze and said, "Jones, you're showing your true colors again. He ain't worth your worry. He didn't even know about our shop." Then, I showed Aaron a laminated article from a magazine. The article was titled, "From Debt to Success," diving deep into the life of a savvy female entrepreneur. It featured a picture of me. Some parts are exaggerated, but what's written there is mostly true. I served the recipe your parents left behind to the payday loan guys, and got them to invest. Since then, it was just pure grind. Defending the shop, repaying the debt. Before I knew it, my annual income crossed $1 million. I looked away, reminiscing about the intense days after Aaron left. I clearly remember the nerve-wracking moment when I served the payday loan guys my dish. If they hadn't liked it, I might have ended up nowhere. But overcoming those days, I turned the shop into the top restaurant in the state. Now, I even have several branches in NYC and have gained nationwide recognition. By the way, Jones quit his payday loan job after tasting my dish and begged, "Let me work under you, Hilda." Now, he's a branch manager and takes it upon himself to protect me from creeps like Aaron. Many of the new branches are modern and sleek, but the original one, the one left by my in-laws, has been preserved in its old charm. It's a special place where I occasionally serve dish myself. It's a vital spot for menu development and brainstorming sessions. As I recounted my journey, Aaron began to tremble, perhaps unable to stomach the fact that the wife he abandoned became such a success. But surprisingly, with a smug expression, he showed me his phone screen.
Don't care about your success story. Already called my gang. In a few minutes, a large group will take over this place. Be ready.
While he pretended to listen to my story, it seemed he was contacting someone from the same group. He's always been a slick guy, good at these clever little tricks. Thanks to recalling that, I had been able to prepare in advance. "You're a tad too late," I said. As I uttered those words, a police officer walked in through the door that Jones had left open. After all, Aaron and Carol were intruders in a closed shop. Calling the police wasn't a problem. Adding to Aaron's misfortune, shortly after the officer, several intimidating black cars pulled up. Cops immediately called for backup. "You'll pay for this." He tried to slip past the cop, but was swiftly nabbed by Jones. The gang members called by Aaron saw the police and left, abandoning him and Carol. Aaron was arrested, and it turned out he was involved in several crimes nationwide. He faced a jail sentence. With his arrest, many of his gang members were caught, and the police even got information on their overseas associates. Even after serving his time, there might be a price to pay for endangering his gang. But that's something out of my hands. As for Carol, she was only with Aaron for his money. Turns out, she genuinely just wanted to start a beauty salon. Quite unexpected. On a later date, when Carol revisited the shop, she apologized profusely and, with an innocent look of a young child, asked, "The sandwich was delicious. Can I come back for more?" From what I heard, for her, who had been shuffled between numerous foster homes, that sandwich was a taste to remember. Now, she's a regular at our place, filling her belly with meals once a week. She apparently wants to eat more, but as an esthetician, she's mindful about gaining weight and reluctantly controls herself. I have a ritual every day before work. It involves paying my respects to a picture of Aaron's parents. I owe a lot to them. Without them, my life wouldn't be what it is. It's a hard pill to swallow, but had I not married him, I wouldn't have lived this life, so I can't help but be grateful for that alone. Hilda, all the representatives from each branch are here. They all seem really enthusiastic. While I was in the back of our main store, paying my respects to Aaron's parents' photo, I could hear Jones's cheerful voice from the dining area. Today's the day for the new menu development meeting. In my in-laws' diner, which has a traditional restaurant vibe, I set out again today to taste test various meals, in search of the best dish.